Hello you guys, welcome back to another Saturday sit down video. So today we are actually going to be talking about something that I really like. I think I'm going to start doing TV show reviews. So I'm super excited about that, and I really just want to get started on just like doing show reviews because I love doing them. So I'm hoping that you guys like it, and yeah. This is gonna be a really quick one. I have like a bunch of notes that I wrote down, so I'm gonna like be looking over here, also doing my makeup at the same time. So it's gonna be a lot, but we're gonna get through this together. If you want to grab a snack, you could do that. If you want to just like watch me, you can also do that. But I know that sometimes my video qualities are not the best, so don't take up any of my makeup skills because I suck at makeup. I just think it's fun to do it while doing a video. So let's get started. I don't even know where I want to start because I feel like there's just so much. So I love this show, and I know like I'm kind of crazy, and I love like true crime and like stuff like that, you know, like just like, I don't know, it just brings interesting into it. And I love shows like this show, and I love like true crime. I love Kendall Rae. She's like my fave. Oh, love her. Can sit and watch her all day. So the show that I'm talking about today is gonna be You. I love You. It's like my favorite show. I've watched it like 3 times now, all 3 seasons about 3 times. So this is going to be an interesting one. So there are 3 seasons out right now, but there is going to be a 4th one. I'm not sure when it's going to come out. Hopefully we get some news about that soon because I'm super excited and I want to watch it. You is actually a thriller novel. It's written by New York Times bestselling author Caroline Kepps. I want to say Kepps. I think that's what it is. I never read the book, but obviously I really love the show, so I might get into reading a book. Right now I have a lot going on, and I have school going on, and reading a book is just not what I want to do right now. So it got adapted into a series in 2018 on Netflix. And it's been popular ever since. So I'm going to talk about season 1, and I'm going to do it in parts. So I'm going to do season 1, part 1, season 1, part 2, just because there's a lot of episodes, and if I were to talk about all the things that happen in each episode, we would be here forever. Some of the middle episodes, because season 1 is 1 through 10, and some of the middle episodes are just filler, and I wish that they didn't have to do all of that, but it's whatever. I'm going to talk about the main characters now, and talk about who plays what, and why they're important, and why I'm bringing them up in the beginning. I just want you guys to know. So, Penn Badgley? I want to say Badgley. I'm not really sure with his last name, but he plays the main character. He played Joseph, also known as Joe Goldberg, who's a bookstore manager in New York City. So I think they casted him so well because he is like the least suspecting person. Like, he looks like he's just, you know, just a normal guy who's kind of like boring, but he is crazy. The second main character in here is Guinevere Beck. Now, she also goes by Beck. She doesn't really go by Guinevere or Gwen either. She goes by Beck. That's played by Elizabeth Leal. I think that's what her name is. And she plays like an up-and-coming writer who is not really that good. We'll get into that a little later. And then we have Peach Salinger. Peach Salinger is Beck's best friend. And that's played by Shay Mitchell. You know, Shay Mitchell from the Pretty Little Liars. Joe Penn Badgley is from Gossip Girl. I've never watched Gossip Girl, so if you guys want me to do like reviews on Gossip Girl, I will. I've never watched Pretty Little Liars, so I will. Well, I watched Pretty Little Liars like a couple of seasons, and then I got bored of it, and I was like, oh my god, when are we gonna know who A is? Like, this is taking forever. And then we also have John Stamos from, I think that's what his name is, Stamos, from Full House, and he plays Dr. Nicky, and he's pretty important because he comes up in other seasons too. So make sure when I talk about him, you pay attention. I don't talk about him in this like video, but in the next one, I will talk about him. Everyone else is like not that important, filler characters. Like Beck has like other best friends, but like their life is not that important. And there's some other characters around Joe that's there that I'll talk about, but they're not that important either. Obviously what makes this show very unique is that Joe, the main character, he narrates the story, and he always goes like, I do this for you, and you need this, or blah 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 blah, and it's like always you. You know, and it makes it so like enticing, like to like be in the head of someone so crazy, because he's crazy, and I love that. Anyways, so let's get started on what's going on in season 1, and I need to get started on doing my makeup because I actually have places to be after this, so I gotta get started and doing stuff for myself. So in season 1, episode 1, it starts out with Joe meeting Beck in the bookstore. They don't know each other, they're just, you know, finding out about each other. Beck comes in trying to buy a book. Joe is there, obviously being the manager, and you know, she's pretty, she knows a lot about books, and he's really like liking this. They're having a little talk, they're having a little chit chat, what book she's gonna buy. He convinces her to buy a book, and after this encounter, he literally becomes obsessed with her. Now, this part I say is kind of cheesy because I really don't like things like this. It's like, are you serious? Like, I don't know. Just something about this makes it feel cheesy, and something about it just makes me just not like it. But I think that's just me and me not liking like regular love stories. So I'm happy that it's not a regular love story because I hate those. So then we meet Paco, which is kind of like a main character in season 1. He's kind of like, for some reason there is a kid in almost every season. Yeah, there's a kid in every season. What? So Paco's a little boy who has a mother named Claudia who has a boyfriend named Ron. I'll talk about him every now and then. I don't really know what he does. I think he's a cop or he's something. I don't really know. So Paco kind of sits outside all the time. Joe always gives him a book. In this encounter, Paco's sitting outside and he's reading the book that Joe gave him. And then he gives him the sandwich that he brought. So, you know, we're supposed to be like, oh, he's so caring. He's so sweet. You know, he's helping this kid out. But then he goes inside his house and he goes online and he starts like stalking Beck's socials, and he finds out a lot about her on her social media. So if you want to know, like, you gotta be careful because these people can really, this is the day and age where they can stalk us on our social media. So we need to be careful about what we're putting out online because this is very scary, okay? And the next scene, Beck is with her friend at a bar. We learned that Beck has rich friends, but she isn't rich. She is actually like not that rich. She's kind of like poor. it's not really expressed why. Anyways, this is also Peach's introduction. So we get the vibe that she's a bit stuck up, right? Like she's just not nice. But she knows Beck doesn't have money and wants to help Beck. So she is sweet to Beck, but also like low-key stuck up, you know? But then we also learn that Joe is there and he's listening to everything. Is he crazy? Yes. How he knows she was there? You know, in the next scene, we see Joe has followed Beck home, but is outside her home just looking in. And for some reason, she has no curtains on her windows, so everyone can look from the New York City streets into her home. Like, she just has her curtains wide open, or she, like, doesn't have any curtains on her windows, and you could just look into her house. Anyways, her ex-boyfriend, who's a douche and cheated on her and blames it on stress. I don't really like him, so we're just going to call him the ex-boyfriend. I still feel bad for him, but then I don't at the same time because he's literally the biggest douche I've ever seen in my life. But for some reason, she's like, he's there to, you know, slide on in. And even though he like tells her the reason why he cheated on her, she still lets him slide on in. And I don't get that. That's like the dumbest thing that you could do. So then the ex-boyfriend leaves, and mind you, Joe is watching from the street, so he can see all of this, okay? The thing is that although the ex-boyfriend leaves, Beck didn't really have a good time. If you know what I'm saying, women out there and the folks, if you know what I'm saying, if you catch my drift. She's like, she decides after he leaves that she's gonna do things by herself. And Joe is obviously watching this. And so he starts to imagine that he's there. And then he's in a bush outside. He's still outside. He's in a bush outside. And he starts doing stuff by himself while she's doing stuff by herself. So that's a bit awkward. Okay, watching that was like, what is going on? He also almost gets caught by this old lady. Anyways, but he's able to like zip it up and hide it. Anyways, Joe goes home and then takes Paco to the bookstore to get more books because Paco is reading through these books really fast. So in the basement of the bookstore is where these older books are, and they're there to be protected or fixed, but they're in this huge glass box. And this is an important thing, okay? This glass box comes up in every season. It's really like an important thing to the plot. So remember that this glass box also holds like books. So next scene, we see that Joe called an electrician or something for a gas leak and has gained access to Beck's apartment by playing her boyfriend. This is all in episode 1, might I add. All the other episodes are like filler episodes, but like episode 1 is like you're getting stuff, right? So he's definitely a creep for doing that. He gets in there, he then goes and snoopes around and finds her computer. For some reason she has like pictures of herself that are nude on there, and he just opens it up and there they are. I don't know. It's very weird. Beck comes home and Joe is obviously still in her house. So we learn that Beck is crying, and it's because she's like, she isn't exactly succeeding as a writer, and her professor wants to sleep with her, but like he doesn't like openly say that. Like he's like, oh, let's go to dinner. Like somehow she doesn't know he's there. her friends calls and she says she's going to Greenpoint, which Greenpoint is a place where they do like open night poetry. So Joe is hearing this. She's saying this on the phone with her friends. They're willing to go to Greenpoint with her. And so she goes, they all go. Joe follows, obviously. He's there. He's being a creep, right? So she performs, but she is drunk, so it was really bad. It was horrible. It made me cringe. It made my stomach hurt. It was bad. But for some reason, she wanted her ex-boyfriend to be there, and he didn't show up, and she was really upset about that. It was really confusing. It makes no sense to me. So Joe leaves after this, like, really bad poetry, and he goes to the train station. However, Beck seems to also be there. I don't really understand how she got there before him, or how he got there. I don't know. And she is texting, and then falls in the tracks because she is so drunk. Now, this scene is very, like, it's very dramatic and weirdly intense for no reason for me. I don't really understand it. So, there's a crazy guy also at the train station, and he's, like, screaming, and he's like, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up, because she's in the train tracks. And then Joe is like, give me your handbag, but Beck is like, you know, like, wooing out because she's so, my dog is sleeping. He's having a great sleep. So she's like woozy or whatever. She's just looking at this train, and she says the train is coming, and she's looking at the train as she's saying this. And I don't really know if it was up to you, but when you fall down, you know, you hit your head, you're a little woozy, yeah, but you also have adrenaline in you when you see a freaking train coming at you, right? So she's still down there, and Beck is like, give me this hand, and this crazy guy is screaming, pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. And then she eventually grabs Joe's hand, and he's able to pull her out. And then she lands on top of Joe, you know, very romantic-esque. Ugh. Anyways, you think they're gonna kiss, but no, she throws up all over his face and his shirt. Isn't that cute? I love that. So they then get into a cab together because, like, she feels bad and she'll drop him off and she'll pay, blah, blah. So they start talking about their lives, doing their thing. Joe slips up and then says, then how would you write poetry? And Beck is like, how do you know I write poetry? And then he's like, doesn't every young writer in New York write poetry? And then she kind of just like goes like, yeah, you're right. And this happens a lot. Like, he slips up quite a bit and he kind of covers himself up, but like, I would still be like, you're a little creepy, like, what? Because you need to learn. You'll see later, because he says things sometimes that I'm like, you're definitely giving me creeper vibes, but okay. And she doesn't catch it at all. Like, it just flies over her head. It makes no sense to me, but it's still a good show. It's still good. Anyways, next scene, Paco's upset because Ron destroyed the book Joe gave him, which was like an old book. Beck's ex-boyfriend gets a message about meeting up with someone for his job, which he decides to do on his own. We then learn it's Joe who sent the message. He leads the ex-boyfriend to the basement of the bookstore with the glass box, because that's important. And ex-boyfriend turns around. Joe takes like a mallet of some sort and just... But he's still alive. Joe just puts him in the glass box while he's knocked out. And then next scene, Beck visits Joe in the bookstore and they have a cute moment. Joe asks her on a date in which she kind of agrees. And the episode ends with the ex-boyfriend being in the glass box. And Joe is very, very proud of himself because he's able to get one obstacle out of his way. Alright, so in episode 2, it starts out with Joe being super excited about their date. Super excited. Beck gets a new phone, but I forgot that somehow in this scenario of last episode, Joe was able to steal Beck's phone. It's very, I don't know. So she gets a new one, but Joe still has the old one, and he's able to see now all her new messages because he's on the cloud. This becomes important later, so remember it, because he's like really using her phone as like a way to like track where she is, where she's going, what she's doing, and all this other stuff, and like her friend conversations about her and how he's doing with her and their relationship or whatever. So Joe goes to the bookstore. He visits the ex-boyfriend, which is in the glass box. The ex-boyfriend actually remembers that he saw Joe in the cab with Beck. So this is now an issue because he now recognizes Joe. Next scene, Joe and Beck go on a date, and they're walking and talking, but Beach calls and says Beck's ex-boyfriend is missing. So now they are getting suspicious. They're like, where is he? Okay. So the date ends because of this. Joe again visits the ex-boyfriend, and he gets the password to his phone from him. But in order to get this passport, in order to get the passport from his phone, he kind of agrees to the ex-boyfriend that he'll give him some Coca-Cola, but not the drink. He gives him some Coca-Cola. Joe sends a message through the ex-boyfriend's phone, which helps with everyone worrying about him. So he kind of just like takes a picture of him while he's passed out from being so high on this Coca-Cola that he's like able to take all these photos of like him like looking like he's partying, and like taking pictures of like of things like he staged of like alcohol and stuff. Anyways, it's a long story short. The guy is like a partier, so it makes sense why he would not pick up the phone, because he's a partier. So next scene, Beck meets with the professor who wants to sleep with her at a restaurant, and of course Joe is obviously there. He's always there. I don't understand. She puts on a bit of a revealing dress, and she puts on some red lipstick. Her ex-boyfriend actually predicted this. He's trying to say that she is not who Joe thinks she is. She's not like some innocent girl. Like he thinks that, you know, she obviously wants to date somebody rich, and she would never go for someone like Joe. But Joe's still trying to get with her, if you know what I mean. So, the professor isn't really at this restaurant with her because he wants to talk about, you know, stuff with her. He's there to kind of like slide on in, okay? So her professor starts to touch her underneath the table, like touch her like bare leg, and she kind of like jolts and like jumps up out of her seat, and it kind of like causes people to look at her, and she says something. I don't really remember what she says, but it just causes people to look. And she starts to apologize to her professor, which is very weird. I don't really understand why she would do that after he just did that. It's like, what? And so her professor says to her that, like, you know, you're flirting with me, you're wearing revealing clothes, and then you don't want me to touch you. Like, what? And then he kind of like releases her from her TA duties because she was kind of like working with him as a teacher assistant. And she begs for it back, but he kind of leaves. So this is a like kind of an important thing, but not really. It's just like part of the plot. It's like, ugh. So Beck then calls Joe, and obviously Joe is there, so he has to run outside and pick up this phone. and she asks for him to meet up with her at the restaurant. So he agrees, and he's like, I'll be there in 15 minutes, but he's like literally there already. He's just sitting outside. And they spend time talking, and then they start talking about like other people in the restaurant and like people on dates or whatever. So Joe looks at like a happy old couple, and he goes like, that's gonna be us in 30 years. And this is like their second date, and they didn't really have a good first date. So I was like, why would he say that? What? But Beck sees no fault in this. She's like, oh yeah, that's so cute, so straightforward. What? And then she leans in for a kiss. Like, you know, they talk a little bit more. She leans in for a kiss, but then doesn't kiss him. Stupid, right? So next scene, Paco tries to go downstairs of the bookstore where the glass case is. Joe luckily stops him and kind of is a bit aggressive with him about it. Obviously, the ex-boyfriend is in the glass case downstairs, so if Paco went down there to go look at the old books, then he would have found the ex-boyfriend, and then Joe would have had to do something to Paco. So obviously he was like, don't go down there. Crazy moment. So at the restaurant, Beck invited Joe to Peach's party. So Peach is like Peach Salinger, which is like, I guess she's the daughter of J.D. Salinger, so she got a lot of money, okay? So, they both arrive at this party, and they're holding hands, but as soon as the door opens, Beck lets go of Joe's hand. Because they're not boyfriend and girlfriend yet, they're kind of just dating. They're seeing how it's going, how they liking each other, you know? So it's not official yet. But I don't know. So he wanders around Peach's mansion. He gets a book that he sees in like this bookshelf. It's a very expensive book, and I think it's an original copy of some type of Wizard of Oz thing. So while he's looking at this book, he gets like a flashback about his childhood, and there's an old man named Mr. Mooney, and he was the guy who owned the bookstore, and he slapped young Joe and locked him in the glass box. So now we're getting to see that Joe does have some trauma in him. We're not really sure what happened with Joe. It's not clear what his history is and what has happened to him, but it does become clear in other seasons and other episodes. But right now we're just getting a glimpse of what has happened to him in his childhood. So Peach finds him and starts a condescending tone in which she is kind of accusing him of something. So she's like, oh, you guys met at the bookstore, and then all of a sudden you're at Greenpoint, and just so happened to like save her. Like, that's like a bit suspicious. Like, are you stalking her? But she didn't exactly tell him that. She's just accusing him, kind of in an accusive tone, right? She then leaves, and we see that Joe steals this expensive book. He takes the book out. This is very important, so you gotta remember it. He follows Peach out, and he watches Peach, and Peach walks over to Beck. Beck is talking to another guy. They're kikiing, they're laughing, and Joe starts to believe the ex-boyfriend and the fact that Beck isn't exactly who he thought she was. I've given up on doing my makeup. I don't think I can do this, but we're still here, right? I don't think I can talk about this and give you good quality content, okay? So next scene, Beck finds Joe, and he asks her why he invited him. They have a moment, and again she leans in for a kiss, but then she dodges, It's so stupid. As Joe is leaving, someone recognizes him and she brings up Candace. So Candace is Joe's ex-girlfriend. And this is an important character because she comes up in other seasons too. When this girl brings it up, he's kind of like, oh, my ex-girlfriend. He says that he thought they were in love, but she left for someone in Rome. The girl brings up, however, how Candace left so suddenly without saying a word. This leads us to conclude that Joe might have done something to her and she didn't really leave on her own. But this is only implied. Beck interrupts and they leave. So we don't really know what has happened to Candace. Joe has said something about it. We know that there's an ex-girlfriend. There was a moment that they had. And now she is possibly in Rome. It's very confusing. Joe visits ex-boyfriend and he has destroyed all the books in the box. Like, he's like ripping the books apart. He's going crazy because obviously he's stuck in this glass box. We would all go crazy in it, right? We then go back to Beck. In this scene, Beck is like standing up to her professor. So basically what she does is she kind of blackmails him. She's like, listen, I got 7 other people that are saying the same experience of you wanting to sleep with them, and I am going to tweet about it unless you give me back my TA position because I need my housing. And he's like, oh, you don't want to blackmail me. And she's like, oh, you don't want to catch my bluff. He then agrees and she gets back her TA position, luckily. We go back to Joe and the ex-boyfriend. Ex-boyfriend needs to give Joe a secret to hold over his head in order to let him go. So Joe's like, give me a good enough secret and then I'll let you go. So ex-boyfriend decides to like go get this hard drive in my place and you'll see that, you know, something has happened and it's my darkest secret. So we learn that ex-boyfriend and his frat buddies apparently killed somebody, and his parents were able to cover it up for him, but he obviously still has this hard drive and he's probably blackmailing other people with this hard drive that are in the video, but we don't really know. Beck visits Joe in the bookstore and she thanks him for encouraging her to get her housing back from her professor. And they finally kiss. Yeah, they kiss. They have a little moment in the bookstore. Isn't it cute? Which this bookstore doesn't really have a lot of people, so. Okay, so then we go back to the ex-boyfriend. And he says the video is a great dark secret, that he likes it. However, he asks him a series of questions because he doesn't like the things that he has said about Beck. So he's like, you're like not important. So obviously Joe and Beck are now kissing, and so now Joe is like, oh, she is who I thought she is. Like, she likes me. Like, blah, 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 blah. The episode ends with Joe getting rid of the ex-boyfriend. Okay, he's done. He's gone. The way he does it is that he puts peanut oil in a latte with almond milk, and so the ex-boyfriend has a peanut allergy and he dies from an allergy. So Joe then takes the ex-boyfriend's phone and some other things and he hides it in his bathroom ceiling. So like his bathroom has like one of those things that you can push up and like push to the side. So he hides that up in his ceiling. This comes out later in the season, so that's an important thing, that the ex-boyfriend's phone is in the ceiling. So that's how episode 2 ends. We are now on episode 3. So episode 3 starts out with Beck and Joe falling in love. They're going on walks, they're doing their thing, and they're starting to spend more time with each other. Joe says in his narration that he wants to wait for them to, because he must take care of his job of getting rid of the ex-boyfriend, because the ex-boyfriend is gone, but he has to get rid of the ex-boyfriend's body. So He tries to disfigure his face, but then he just couldn't do it. Like, Joe is like actually probably one of the weakest I've ever seen, actually. We then learn that Beck is sleeping around with other guys, okay? So Joe is kind of upset because he knows that there isn't a label, so he can't be mad, but he chooses to instead try to sweep her off her feet. During one of her hookups, she breaks her bed. So in the next scene, Joe brings her to a furniture store to buy a new bed. They start flirting and then start kissing, and then they start doing some other stuff, but Beck stops him because they're in public, and that's embarrassing. I totally get it, Beck. Beck talks about her dad to Joe, about how he was an addict and how he died. Joe gets back to his house where the police were outside with Ron. They asked him about the list he gave to Paco earlier to run errands, which was a list to help bury the body. So earlier in the episode, Paco gets this list from Joe, and he's like, "Can you go do this stuff for me?" And Paco's like, "Yeah," and it's literally like things to get rid of a body. So Joe, however, can cover it up by saying it's for his garden. Duh. We learn that something fishy is happening with Peach not liking Joe for Beck because he isn't rich. Beck gets upset and leaves. So Peach doesn't like Joe. We're getting this feeling that she doesn't like him. Not very much. As Joe is getting rid of the body of ex-boyfriend, Beck calls and they get into a fight about Peach or something, all while Joe's trying not to get caught burying a body because there's like other people in the woods like just looking around. So he covers it up with a fire, so he's able to like be fine. Anyways, they get back together though, and Beck has decided to put aside her whole mentality and get serious with Joe. It's cute. At the end of the episode, Joe and Beck get intimate, and Joe finishes early, if you know what I mean. So Beck was a bit disappointed. Yeah, it was a very embarrassing moment, and I totally understand why she would be like so disappointed. I've had that experience more than once, actually. Anyways, start of the episode. Okay, so now we're on episode 4. And in episode 4, Beck is still disappointed about last night. However, her friends are even being a bit mean about it. They're like, "Oh, he didn't, you know," and she's like, So Beck lies to Peach about going to some retreat in Rockland for her writing to get out of going to some hotel with her. So Beck is going to some type of like Rockland writing thing. That's what she tells Peach, but we find out that it's a lie. So Beck arrives at a hotel. So she arrived at this hotel, and we find out that she's like waiting for somebody. And we're all thinking, oh, she's waiting for someone, you know, this might be her secret lover or something. But it's not. It's actually her dad, who we thought was dead in the beginning of the show. But to find out, he is not dead at all. He is actually very much alive. Oh, and Joe is there. Sorry, I forgot. So we find out that her dad is remarried to a stuck-up lady with stuck-up kids. Okay, they're all stuck-up. Beck is surrounded by stuck-up people. And Beck's a little stuck-up too. She thinks she's like all that in a bag of chips, but she's not. So we find out her dad can't keep sending her money because her stepmom is pregnant. And yeah, so her dad has money and he's been sending her money. But she, for some reason, is still poor. It makes no sense. So Peach goes to the bookstore and she finds out that Joe isn't there. So she gets to think that Beck lied to her about going somewhere with Joe. And the store helper calls Joe, lets him know that, you know, this girl was looking for him, blah, 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 blah. Joe then decides that he will have to come up with something since Beck might be looking for him. So for some reason, Beck now gets a thing like, oh, Joe is at this convention, I gotta look for him. So they eventually see each other. Well, Joe lets her see her, lets her see him. Anyways, he kind of makes up this thing. He's like, I followed you here because, you know, last night wasn't really good and I just wanted to make sure that you were good, blah, 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 blah. And for some reason that works. If my ex-boyfriend followed me all the way to a different place and was like, hey, like, you know, I would be a little creeped out, but she's totally fine with it for some reason. And then she basically is like embarrassed because she's like, my dad's actually very much alive and I lied to you about it and I'm sorry. And he's like, it's okay, like, I understand. So she explains to him that her father left her. He didn't really like die. He left her and her mom and he became sober. And then he started contacting her when she got into college. So, Beck, Joe, stepmom, and kids go to dinner, okay? Beck tries to get her father to remember something about sailing, but her stepmom and her get into a fight, and to be honest, it got me really heated, okay? It got me really mad because I understand, like, she's like, listen, you met him when he was sober, okay? I was down in the trenches with this man. He was, you know, an addict and I was there. I saw it all. And now you're trying to make it seem like me, my mom, weren't Christian-like. So that's why he was so addicted and, you know, like almost putting blame on her that she was the one that was making him addicted when it was really just him. And he was a bad person, not her. And for this like stepmom to be like, oh, you know, what can happen in a Christian home or something like that, and just kind of like putting blame on Beck a little bit, and it's just really sad. So I understand why Beck is like really upset. She's like, how can you like think that you're so perfect and, you know, make him seem like he's so perfect when really like he's the one who's done wrong, right? So they get in a fight. Beck leaves. Joe follows her. They get into a fight because she's like, why are you here? Like, just go. Like, I don't want to talk to you. Like, she's having a little diva moment. Then her dad comes over, and her dad's trying to reach out to her, but he didn't really defend her during that fight. He didn't do anything. He just, like, sit there like a little baby and lost. Like, that's what he did, okay? So he comes over to Beck, and he's like, she kind of like tells him like why she's upset, blah blah blah, and he kind of like, you know, he like brushes it off kind of, and he like, you know, is asking her, do you want to go to Christmas, blah blah blah. He's like trying to invite her somewhere else, and she's just not having it. She's just like, I gotta check my schedule. She just doesn't want to talk to him anymore, which is totally fine because obviously I would be upset too if this is all going down. Like, go ahead, have your nice baby, have your nice life. Like, don't remember me. It's fine. Like, don't take care of me. Don't even give me money because obviously you're not my father. You weren't there anyways. Whew. So Beck gets some influence from this and she starts writing. She says, you know, blah, blah. Beck finds where Joe lives and goes to apologize, and she gives him another shot at, you know, the stuff, you know, to slide on in there and to do a good job. Like, she gives him another shot to do this, okay? So he does a good job. It was really good, but the thing is that she kind of comes to his house unannounced. So he has like a pair of her underwear out, her phone, her diary, and he has to hide all these things while kissing her. So he did a good job, and then he's able to slide on in there, and then they were, you know, at the end of the episode, Joe decides he has to do something with Peach because she might be getting in the way of their relationship. So we learn that, you know, Peach is like, she needs to step on back because this guy's crazy and she don't know what she getting herself into. Okay, so it starts out, episode 5 starts out with them falling in love even more. They're having a morning routine. She's staying over. He's doing laundry. They're eating, having coffee together. It's cute, you know. It's cute. So I forgot to mention in the other episodes, but Peach has found out that she is missing this book now. And obviously Joe has the book, and she hasn't proved that she has the book, that he has the book, but she's been telling Beck, like, this book is missing, like, I saw Joe holding it, and Beck is like, no, he would not do that, he's like a lover of books, blah blah blah. But it makes sense why a bookstore owner would steal a very expensive book. Like, why that would be the first instinct, because none of my friends would care about a book, but a bookstore clerk would care. So Beck gets some good news about getting job offers from this teacher, but it's all on the premise that her dad's dead, but we all know that her dad's not dead. So it's kind of like fake things. Anyways, Peach asks for Joe to shut down the bookstore so she can throw a party and introduce Beck to some type of author. He's like, I don't know, he's like some type of special, like, I don't know, book writer, however. So, but then we learned from Joe, from him, like, listening to conversations, that this publisher / author, I don't really know, is not, he doesn't think that Beck is a good writer, and Peach is just like, you know, just fake it, like, oh, be nice about it, blah 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 blah. She isn't really, like, Peach is not really, like, helping Beck's career. She's kind of like trying to sabotage it in a way. It's just like she's not really helpful. So Beck and Joe get into a fight. It's like a weird, stupid fight. I don't really care. They get into so many fights. It's so tiring at this point. Then Beck and Peach got into a fight, and Beck says it is exhausting being her friend. They got in the fight. It's all about the author and the bookstore. I don't know. Anyways, Peach then fakes an overdose of some sort because, you know, Beck and Peach got into a fight. So Beck is falling for it, but Joe is not, because Peach writes down all the things that she's taken, like written it down in a book, so that she can, you know, be fine. Like, she's just being drowsy and all this stuff. So she's crazy. Joe's crazy, but she's another crazy. She's like, yeah, she's like competition for Joe, because he's crazy and stalkerish, and she's crazy and needy and codependent on her friend. It's weird. So the next day, Joe goes running and is following Peach. We then see that Joe hits her with a rock, and she's on the ground, and Joe thinks she's... So then we go to the next scene. And Joe goes home. He's like there, and he sees Paco and Joe are outside of their apartment, but John is outside of the apartment, passed out on the ground. So Paco admits to Joe that he gave John a bunch of sleeping pills. So Joe is like, go get these things, and then he puts his fingers down John's like throat, makes him throw up. And instead of being thankful for saving his life, John gets up and starts beating Joe. So Joe's now laying on the ground. He's bloody. He's got punches in his face, you know. You know? Beck calls him. She's like, hey, Peach is in the ER. She was attacked. I'm going there now. And so Joe is like, she's alive? And that's how episode 5 ends. Yes. Yes, indeed. So I said a whole bunch of stuff. A whole bunch. And I know it's very overwhelming, because it's like overwhelming for me. So that's how 5 episodes were for season 1. I honestly think some of these episodes are like filler episodes, because by 3, 4, and 5, I'm like, oh my god, can you just like get get to the gist. But you don't know this. Like, I've rewatched it like a couple of times, so maybe when you're watching it for the first time, it's like pretty important. But for me, it's like, it's filler. It's very much filler. But yeah, that is season 1, episode 1 through 5, part 1 of me reviewing You. So my camera died, but thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next week.